Ant-Man. They made a feature-length movie about an Ant-Man.
An Ant-Man.
Marvel can make a film about anything! Development of an Ant-Man film began as far back as the 80s, when Stan Lee pitched the story of his creation to New World Pictures. However, this was rejected as Disney were already developing another movie with a similar concept, and they didn't want to risk a lawsuit, so the project was shelved. We were neglected an Ant-Man movie because of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Dude.
Howard Stern, of all people, then tried to purchase the rights in 2000 before being shut down. And 3 years later, British icon Edgar Wright and his writing partner Joe Cornish wrote a treatment for Marvel and Others in Entertainment. However, this was also rejected, as they wanted it to be more of a family film rather than the more adult heist movie Wright wanted to make. A year later, Wright and Cornish pitched their idea directly to Kevin Feige, who loved it, and they were then hired to make the movie in 2006. Wright insisted that despite the goofy nature of the character, the movie wouldn't be a spoof, but rather an action comedy, incorporating both the Hank Pym and Scott Lang iterations of the character, acting as a standalone feature that could then be implemented into a wider universe later. However, the project remained stuck in developmental hell for nearly a decade, as it was constantly shafted in favour of bigger properties such as Iron Man and Thor, as well as Wright and Cornish taking off to work on other projects during the wait. Pre-production wouldn't actually begin until January 2013. By July, the script was completed, but Wright put production on hold so that he could finish directing The World's End before eventually returning in November that year. When casting the titular character, Ewan McGregor, Adrian Brody and Joseph Gordon-Levitt were considered, but Wright always intended to cast Paul Rudd, as he felt that his image as a comedic actor would subvert audience expectations when casting him as an action star. Rudd instantly jumped at the chance, as he was a big fan of the comics and had even previously tried to buy the rights himself. Funnily enough, when Rudd told his 9-year-old that he would be playing Ant-Man, he replied, "Wow, I can't wait to see how stupid that will be."
I'm Ant-Man. Ant-Man.
For the role of Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, Sean Bean, Gary Oldman and Pierce Brosnan were all considered, but Wright had his heart set on casting Michael Douglas, as he was a huge fan of his since childhood and had always wanted to work with him. The director also wanted to cast Rick Moranis in a cameo as an homage to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but it wasn't meant to be.
Really?
However, in May 2014, Wright ended up leaving the project altogether as he was uncomfortable with the amount of studio notes he was getting from Marvel, especially because he was used to having complete creative control over his own movies. I wanted to make a Marvel movie, but I don't think they really wanted to make an Edgar Wright movie. At one point they wanted to draft the script without me, and that was a tough thing to move forward with. Suddenly becoming a director for hire on it, you're sort of less emotionally invested, and you start to wonder why you're there.
A little over the top, don't you think?
Once Wright took off, the majority of his crew left with him out of loyalty, putting the film's future into question. Adam McKay was then asked to direct, but declined out of respect for Wright, who he was good friends with, though he did agree to help Paul Rudd make some rewrites to the screenplay. Other directors were then considered, including Ruben Fleischer, Rawson Marshall Thurber, Nicholas Stoller, Michael Dowse and David Wayne, before finally settling on Peyton Reed. Filming began in August 2014 and ended that October, and Reed insisted that though he wanted to take the character in his own direction, the movie would still retain many of the ideas and spirit of Wright's original vision, and he worked closely with Paul Rudd to make sure that they stayed as true to Wright's story as possible. Some changes were made though. Wright originally intended to open the film with a scene of a young Hank Pym infiltrating a military base in Panama using the Ant-Man suit. The entire scene was shot, but during editing, Reed felt that it was too disconnected from the main plot and cut the whole thing out.
You're gonna regret that.
There were still some problems, one of which is appropriately pretty funny for a movie called Ant-Man. For the final fight on a miniature train set, the rights holders to Thomas the Tank Engine would only allow them to use a model Thomas train if the character wasn't depicted as doing anything evil. Paul Rudd and Peyton Reed even had to give the brand owners a presentation to show that the characters used in the film wouldn't compromise their image. Okay, the image of two grown men giving a detailed PowerPoint presentation about fucking Thomas the Tank Engine is actually hysterical.
You seem a bit shocked.
Ant-Man was released on July the 17th, 2015, and it was another hit for Marvel, grossing $519 million worldwide, and was praised by critics, many of whom appreciated the film's smaller stakes. As for Edgar Wright, despite leaving the project on his own terms, he has never seen the finished product and never intends to do so either, saying, "It would be kind of like asking, do you want to watch your ex-girlfriend have sex?"
Yes.
I do have to say, Paul Rudd as Ant-Man is one of the greatest casting decisions of all time. I mean, we're all used to him just appearing in stupid comedies and being Mike from Friends. We don't talk about that.
I was in the last episode, which made no sense to me whatsoever.
So casting him as a superhero that nobody takes seriously is fucking hilarious. That is genius alone. He'll get along with Captain America though, considering he's an ex-convict but apparently hates violence. I mean, this never comes into play at all. He says he hates violence, but then throughout the film never hesitates to participate in violence.
I hate violence.
But even when discussing the plot, it kind of loses me.
Was the Ant-Man real?
Just a tall tale.
Right. Because how could anything so miraculous possibly be real?
This is a world where Thor is real, Incredible Hulk is real, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, all of that impossible shit is real, but a suit that somehow shrinks you down to the size of an ant, that is completely ridiculous.
It has nothing to do with the story.
And I'd like everybody to just please form a line, place your bets. We have a struggling single mother who's trying to co-parent with Paul Rudd. Who should we cast? Who? Of course, yes, Judy Greer right there. Who else could it be?
Not necessarily.
To be fair, you do feel sorry for Scott. He's clearly made mistakes and he just wants to make amends. I feel like this is what a certain other ex-convict father from a certain other movie that shall not be named was trying to achieve, but in this one, he's not an asshole. He even counts down the days until he's able to see his daughter again. And hey, they even got their own discount Lex Luthor, that's cool. He basically gets tricked and coerced into stealing the Ant-Man costume and it just so happens to fit him. How convenient. And yeah, it definitely does resemble Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but it looks awesome. Bit of an idiot though. The water comes on and Scott doesn't just hit the same buttons again. Logic would dictate that you just turn your normal size again. He doesn't even try it. Instead, he nearly gets drowned, nearly gets scratched on a record player, nearly gets stomped on, nearly gets vacuumed, nearly gets eaten by a rat, and somehow still survives. Jesus Christ, he went through more in the last 2 minutes than all of the characters in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids trilogy put together.
What's the difference?
Weirdly, once they realise Scott has escaped prison, they set out a 5-block perimeter and lock down the jail. But they've established pretty heavily that Scott isn't even a hardened criminal. They're really going to go all out like this for a petty thief? But this is where it loses me. Now look, the suit I can buy. Gadgets that can also shrink and expand things, sure. But he is literally able to control ants as weapons. Fucking bats as weapons, ants as weapons, anything goes now. Fuck it, it's ridiculous. Then again, it's Ant-Man, it's supposed to be ridiculous. But at least someone finally listened to these reviews when I say the crossovers don't make any sense.
I think our first move should be calling the Avengers.
But to be fair, their reason actually is valid.
I spent half my life trying to keep this technology out of the hands of a Stark.
That's all I wanted. Of course we get a funny montage of Scott trying to master his powers, but he keeps falling over and over. But he does manage to give Falcon a good run for his money, considering he was a damn soldier.
Hey, how about the fact that I fought an Avenger and didn't die?
Weirdly, Falcon wasn't even supposed to appear in the film. Paul Rudd and Adam McKay saw the Winter Soldier just before filming began, and they liked the character so much that they wrote up an entire scene between him and Ant-Man just so they could include him in the film.
This is awesome.
And the whole exchange is hilarious, I can't lie.
It's okay. You can't see me.
I can see you.
But these movies need to stop making me upset about a fucking ant dying. It's an ant! And it wouldn't be a Marvel movie without another man with another shrinking suit to fight him, son of a butt-licking Eskimo, every fucking time!
I'm gonna disintegrate you!
Claim disintegration by the Cure.
Okay, that makes up for it. They do a fake out where he dies in a fly trap, but I must admit, the suit and voice are both terrifying. This is a really imposing villain, which they break up with comedy really well. Unfortunately, throughout the film, Scott has some friends who try so desperately to be the comic relief, but they are so painfully unfunny. They have some cool stuff like when he tells a story and the actors in the cutaways speak his lines, but it's still his voice. Alright, that's pretty good. But they are so painful whenever they're on screen elsewhere. They are so unfunny. Scott ends up sacrificing himself to protect his daughter and ends up in another reality, which does look pretty cool.
Gone forever.
Okay, that didn't happen. This movie is alright. It's not one of their best, it's not one of their worst. It has funny moments and it has unfunny moments. It's entertaining enough, but honestly, I'll probably forget that it exists after a few days of watching it. Phase 2 doesn't exactly end on a high note.